I'm going to repeat this in a few minutes, but the goal for today is I'm going to give you all a short summary of the story so far, along with my goal for the story, and then I'll give you a summary of where my players are currently at and what was the last thing they encountered. From there, we can go on discussing what we can do, how I think of things to add to the story, so on and so forth. Feel free to ask any questions whenever you want. I'll be happy to answer them. And we're going to be doing that for the majority of 2 hours, just kind of going back and forth between questions, answers, and, you know, building upon what is here. Essentially giving you guys a glimpse into my process as a dungeon master and creating worlds. And very specifically, in between sessions, what do I do to create content? And I'm hoping showing you guys my methods will help you guys maybe learn how to do it yourselves, show you the tools I use, etc., etc.
Cool, perfect. Um, okay, let's see here. So, yeah, let's kick it off. So, welcome everyone to the D&D Newbie Sessions community, and I'm here. I'm Sam here with Anthony,
Hello.
and as Anthony just described, that's what he's going to be covering today. If you have questions along the way, you can post them to the special events text channel or the Twitch chat. But we also, highly encourage. This is an interactive workshop. So if you have, you can also unmute yourself using the push to talk feature in Discord, and ask questions and interact and engage with it. So please do that. Highly recommended. And then if you do not see the stream right now, if you're in the Discord and you're like, wait, are we supposed to be looking at something right now? There is a stream going. So you either have to click in the sidebar under the special events voice channel. You can double click on, what did you you updated your nickname? Yeah, to DM Anthony where it says live. Or in if you click on the channel where all of our boxes are listed, there should also be a box that says watch stream. So you want to do that
Yep.
so you can actually see it.
And fair warning, we are streaming to Twitch, so if you don't want your voice to be live streamed to another, website, just be aware of that.
Yeah, good point. So yeah, if you're having trouble with getting Discord work, if you're new to it or anything like that, you can also switch over to Twitch, and that should be a little easier as well.
Yep.
Cool. Well, without further ado, Anthony, feel free to take it away.
All right. Welcome everyone to the nightmare realm of the Isle of Mephisto. Now, I say nightmare realm, it's not necessarily nightmare, but it is my psychological horror campaign. Now, when you write your own campaign, you can write whatever you want. I enjoy putting a lot of horror creatures in my stories and really going along the uncanny valley, making my players feel uncomfortable because from my experience as a DM myself, I find that I personally am able to get my players more engaged in the story when I use elements like that. Now, not saying that's the right way to do it. You could do it however you want. That's the glory of being a DM. You find the way that you are good at what you do, and you find the way that you like to tell your story, and you run with it. Don't let anyone tell you that you're doing something wrong. The one golden rule I have in my book is never say no to your players. It's the golden rule of improv. If someone comes to you with something, you say yes or something along those lines. You have to give something to build off of. And that's essentially what D&D is. So I'm going to show you guys, as I said earlier, my process on how I create content, how I prepare for my next session, and how I essentially just go over everything that I do. And during this time, you guys are going to be able to ask questions. Any question, seriously, any question is on the table. It does not have to be related to my set. It does not have to be related to my campaign. It could just be a general DMing question. Anything is fair game, and I'll be happy to answer them. And during this, you guys can pitch ideas for what you think might work in this campaign. as I give you examples and show you what I do, and we'll just go on from there. So, the Isle of Mephisto. Let me start with the universe that this sits in. The universe is a pretty simple one. It's called the Ethereum. Now, what is the Ethereum? Well, the Ethereum is actually another dimension that exists separate from all others. Think of it like a nexus. This dimension is able to connect to every other multiversal dimension plane of existence through dimension doors. Essentially, when you use a dimension door, there's a 1 out of 1 millionth chance that it will open to the Isle of Draco or the Isle of Mephisto, somewhere within the Ethereum. And that is how people came to be on this island. Through magic and tinkering with teleportation and dimension doors, they found themselves here within the Ethereum. The Isle of Mephisto is the second island discovered within the Ethereum, the first being the Isle of Draco. I won't go too deep into that, but the Isle of Draco is essentially meant to be a giant sleeping dragon, straight out of the folklore of the world on the turtle's back. I believe that's a Native American folklore. So, the Isle of Mephisto. Now, if you don't know, Mephisto is another name for the devil. And like Mephistopheles, for example. So, what is happening on this island specifically? Well, something has happened, and here's the fun part. I haven't written that part yet, but something has happened that has caused this plane of existence to begin merging with the nightmare realm. And these creatures and abominations are starting to appear within this world alongside reality. Things that are not meant to be here are slowly happening. Now, when I say I don't even know how that happened, you might think I'm crazy for not having a crucial plot point planned out at this point of time. I'm already 3 sessions in, but that's totally okay. You do not have to write your big bad evil guy right off the bat. You do not have to write, what is causing all of this chaos or what is driving the story. You don't have to write that right away. You can just start telling a story and see where the story goes. Maybe for one encounter you had this wizard up in a tower and the players were like really rude to this dude. That guy could end up becoming the big bad evil guy or the BB&G for short. It could literally be whatever you think of down the line. And having that form of fluid storytelling is okay. It can be absolutely scary, not knowing or not having an answer to something for your players, but that's where improv comes in. So I'll give you a great example. In my last session, my players wanted to investigate a graveyard. Now, I had not written any content for this graveyard yet, but I had one thing in mind for this graveyard that I have not yet revealed to my players, and that is the graveyard actually has a secret tunnel in the mausoleum that leads to a hidden underground basement of a mage tower where abominations are residing because this wizard was doing experimentation on demonic entities and essentially turning townsfolk into demons and some pretty gruesome stuff down there. But I did not reveal any of that to my players. And the reason is my players are not ready. They're only level 3. These things need at least level 6 or higher to be killed. But I didn't push them away from this. No. My players went into the mausoleum and they only investigated 3 of the 50 little cubbies that exist. The great thing about being a DM and your players are at a point you don't want them to be yet, you can just move the goalpost without them knowing. As long as you do it without them knowing, if you move the goalpost with their full attention, it's not that great. It's not that fun. But in this instance, they just simply didn't find the secret thing that opened the trap door. But what I did do is I tossed in, and this just goes to show like things not prepared and building upon things. Once they entered, one of my players closed the door behind the two players that walked into the mausoleum. Now, not sure if any of you guys, know, but being in a mausoleum alone is terrifying. Um, so I decided to mess with my players a little bit. And out of nowhere, again, I had no content written for this. I decided one of my players sees a ghost of a little boy. And in the same spot, the other player sees a ghost of a little girl. And they both say, or the little boy says, "Mommy, I'm scared," to one of the female characters. And the little boy or the little girl says, "Daddy, I'm scared," to one of the male characters. And this is just to mess with them. I have no rhyme or reason for this happening. It is me just messing with them. And it's fun. So you got these ghost-like entities in this mausoleum, and now my players are sitting there for 30 minutes trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm sitting here like, there's really nothing going on. I'm just messing with you, but I'm not going to tell them that. Because what has happened is they have then created their own content for about 30 minutes, and I didn't really have to do anything. Right before they left the mausoleum, the one of the players, the last player to leave, looked back into it, and he saw this pristine white marble statue staring back at him, almost weeping angel style. And then he blinked and it was gone. Again, I had no reason to do that other than mess with them, but they are now super interested in going back to that graveyard, and I want them to be. Because I want them to eventually find that hidden passageway. So, I have a little bit of a conundrum. I improv'd all of this stuff happening at this graveyard, and now, inadvertently, I've created content for this graveyard. I have no real goal yet with that, but it's there. This graveyard is haunted. I've now put a stake in that, and that is now truth in this world. So whenever they visit this graveyard, there's going to be something spooky happening, just for fun. And the reason is probably because of the whole demonic thing happening beneath the Mage Tower. So don't be afraid to be unprepared, is what I'm trying to say. Because when you're unprepared, that's when some really awesome shit could happen. Excuse my language. That's when some really awesome stuff could happen. Literally, what I like to do is I like to build my world. I do not like to say this is happening here right now at this moment. I don't like to do that. I will do that sometimes when the story calls for it, but having an event that is timed, it can absolutely add more depth to the world. But what's also really fun to do is just put things there. Don't say the players will find this. Give it checks, balances, like, oh, this is there, but the players have to roll a certain thing to find this, or it's just sitting there and they have to enter a certain room. For example, in one of the towns, there was a tunnel dug into an abandoned house's closet. When the players opened the closet, it was piled with junk covering the tunnel. My players could have dug through that junk, but they didn't. So they didn't discover that, but it's still there. A lot of times people are scared of being unprepared. But in all honesty, it's it is a rational fear because you don't want to be caught with your pants down. But At the same time, have fun with it. Whatever you do does not have to make sense right then and there. I like to look at my worlds and I like to think of them as a very long piece of yarn wrapped up together. And every time I pull a strand of that yarn, other strands kind of pop off along the edges of that string. And later down the line, I can pull on one of those extra strands that came off and create this branching pathway of story. I can run with one idea and pick little things from that idea to go further in. For example, earlier I said that this plane of existence is merging with the nightmare realm. I literally came up with that maybe last week. And we've already been playing this campaign for a month. So, what led me to decide that? One of the things I enjoy doing in my campaigns is I like to look for monsters. And I like to look for creepy monsters. So, I found this. This is a Nightwalker. It is a towering Goliath of a creature. It's undead, but it looks obviously terrifying. And if you see this thing while you're sleeping in your camp and you're like level 3, you're not going to be having a good time. So I decided I wanted this in my campaign and I wanted it soon. But I don't want my players to fight it because they would die if they did. So I decided this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be in my campaign because it's going to be roaming the nightmare realm. And because of what I am calling the conjunction, because of the conjunction where the planes of existence kind of merge together, these things are roaming around the Isle of Mephisto, but they can't see anything because they're still partly in the nightmare room. So they could look directly at the players and not notice them whatsoever. Play with physics, play with magic, have fun. Whatever you do doesn't need to have a reason because this is a magical world. It could literally be because magic. Have fun with it. So let's look at the stats here. This thing is beefy. Average hit points is 297. This would kill a party of 5 at level 3. This would absolutely destroy them. It's a challenge rating of 20. So you don't want your party to fight this. But what I have done is here, you'll see the Blackwood Forest. Now, if you notice, I made this map and all the trees in the Blackwood Forest are dead. Every single one of them. No life whatsoever. Now, the trees are dead because of this corruption that's spreading. They were very susceptible to the corruption, whereas other trees were more hardy to it. And this journey between Cedarfall and Eclectic, which is where my players are currently heading, it's going to take at least 2 days of travel. So that gives me the perfect opportunity to introduce the Nightwalkers. When they go to bed, they're going to most likely make camp along the road. When they're making camp, whoever is on second watch for the night will watch as a tree nearby, this large dark hand, grasps the trunk of the tree. And the tree will react to this as this large, dominating 50-foot tall creature slowly steps out from the darkness and looks directly at the party. Pause for dramatic effect. Let the players react to it. Let the players do whatever roles they want to do. Let the players wake up the rest of their party. Let them react to this large creature. And then, right before they take their action, or when they attempt to take their action, you comment saying, as you walk up to this creature, you notice it looks away. have them roll an insight check or a perception check, and set the DC pretty low, like 10. And if they roll anything lower than a 10, they're like, you're too scared to really think. If they roll something higher, it's, you notice this thing doesn't actually notice you. It's just walking. That's when the players are going to start questioning, why? Why can't it see us? Why is it here? What the hell is going on? And you want your party to ask those questions. You're not going to give them the answer, obviously. But here's the fun part. They're going to start thinking of answers for you. And I saw this in a video the other day where it was, the play I it's from One Shot Questers. I forget the exact video, but it's like when the party has a better story idea than you, literally listen to your party, listen to your players, listen to what they think might be happening, and take notes. Literally, if they think something's happening and what they think is happening is a better idea than what you may have come up with, because let's be honest, every idea we come up with isn't the greatest idea. It's not always the best idea. Someone else is always capable of coming up with a better idea based off some of your work. Be humble, be honest, and take that in stride. They may come up with something or an idea that you really enjoy that you didn't think about. Make the note and make it happen. Don't be afraid to take those random ideas that your players are thinking. Like, wait, is it Mrs. Buckleworth down in, do it. Go ahead and roll with that. If that sounds like it's way more interesting than whatever you had planned, don't be afraid to change your story to fit that. So, yeah. Do we have any questions at all so far?
None typed out. Yeah, does it? If anyone has a question, remember you can post it in that special events text channel or on Twitch. So please do if you, or even a comment or anything like that.
Yeah.
You can also use push to talk as well if you want to ask via voice.
Oh, I'm very quiet. Let me just move my microphone a little closer to me. All right, there we go.
Yeah, that sounds good. Looks like the squiggled. And maybe, yeah.
What's up?
The squiggled said no questions, but the Nightmare Walkers look extremely cool, which I totally agree.
I know,
it's
right?
Amazing looking.
All right, sorry, I'm just pulling up Twitch so I can also see the chat there as well. Yeah, so if the party decides to attack this creature, that's where so the decision I made was that it's merging with the Nightmare Realm, but this creature, you can see this creature, but this creature, you can't interact with it. Like, it's not actually there. It looks like it's there, but it's not actually there. That way, if the players do want to try and attack it, it's completely safe for them to do so. And yes, Skoden, one of the most important lessons I learned with D&D is that even though you're the dungeon master, the whole thing you're doing, your campaign, is actually a cooperative story. You're working with your players to tell the story. They are part of the story that you're writing. You're not writing a story and then having the players play that story. You're working together to write a story. I'm going to use Critical Role as a great example. Matt, he doesn't plan every little detail. For example, there is a section where the players decide, hey, we want to dig out this tunnel and we want to go down this tunnel. And Matt was a little caught off guard with that. He didn't necessarily plan it, but he didn't say no. He let it happen and he rolled with it. And he had fun with it. Let's see. So what do you do? A little. So real quick, I'll get back to you, Kark, in a second. But Squiggle. So I don't keep a poker face. But I don't this is an online session. So I I just mute my mic and just laugh in the background a little bit. Um or I just sit there grinning my face off and just have fun. But if it was in a real life session, don't be afraid to hide your emotions, you know? Don't be afraid to show that you too are having fun because that just adds more chaos to it and it's great. All right. Can you reflect a little bit on your first DM session? What steps you took to prepare and make a good session for everyone? Okay, so I have taken a few notes in regards to uh, generic dungeon masters and sessions that I created. There is the trope of you all meet in a tavern. I'm gonna be honest, I hate that. I hate you all meet in a tavern. I hate when it's like you guys have been adventuring for like a few weeks now. Half the time, and this is especially true when you have a handful of players who've never met before, you don't know anything about their characters. You don't know anything about their personality. That doesn't make sense story-wise. But here's something else you can do instead. Instead of you all meet X, do this. Something is happening and the players are just bystanders to this. But something that whatever is happening is forcing them to take action. And by doing that, you give the team a goal. They have to work together or something bad's going to happen and they have to face the consequences of it. A great example of that is actually, again, Critical Role. While they kind of did start in a tavern, the players were coming from different backgrounds and it was actually the first time they were meeting each other. At least the characters rather. And they rolled off of that. In this campaign, the one I'm running, all of my players woke up in a circle around each other with no memory of their past lives. Complete amnesia. They just woke up, they were all holding these like ruby gems, fake ruby gems, and they had no idea who each other were or whatnot. As the fog dissipated, they were in a world they never recognized. And they were just like, where the hell are we? Who the hell are you? What the hell are we going to do? And whoever takes the step and becomes air quotes the leader is going to be the person who says, hey, I see town over there. How about we go say hello? And then everyone will be like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. And then they begin their journey. Don't be afraid to introduce a party with no history whatsoever. Just roll with it. Give them a collective goal that they can head towards. Now, I do that by essentially removing all other options. The first session or two of my campaigns are railroaded a bit because, for example, in this world, they start off in Rhinecar Mills up here. There's really nowhere else for them to go aside from the mills, Cedar Fall, and the Mage Tower. But what this does is it forces them to pick one at least, and something will happen. It slowly starts that character development between players. The greatest thing about this is the players then get more engaged because as a player, you only know what you know. So you don't know who these other players are, you don't know who their characters are, and you're learning at the same time as your character does. And that just adds another level of immersion because you're learning at the same time as your character. It's not like you've been handed a pamphlet you have to read. So that's what I do. Let's see. How do you keep to yes and one player is hellbent on thwarting the step A conflict that leads to your planned step B to Z? So that is difficult. That is quite tricky. There's always going to be a player that, whether intentional or not, is trying to derail something. And remember how I said earlier, I'm not sure if you were here, I mentioned moving the goalpost. That's the great thing about the DM screen. You can move the goalpost wherever you like. For example, up here in Rhinecar Tower, the Mage Tower to the north, my players encountered an undead entity Um, I'll get to you links. Give me one moment. Thank you, Sam, for forwarding that to me. So my players encountered an undead entity that was a skeleton mixed with a boneless that made it look like a zombie. Now, if you don't know what either of those two are, let me just pull it up here. I'll just show you the boneless because everyone knows what a skeleton looks like. Boneless. This creature was introduced with, I believe it was so and so's guide to Ravenloft. Van Richter's guide to Ravenloft. And it is essentially a sack of skin that is looking for a body to enwrap itself around and essentially to regain its bones. So I had the great idea of what if you had a skeleton, a skeleton monster, and a boneless working together. The boneless is happy because he has a skeleton, and the skeleton is happy because it has flesh. To the party, it looks like a zombie, and it behaves like a zombie. But when the zombie is killed, instead of doing its role to come back up, the skin peels away from the skeleton, and they tag team to defeat whoever's attacking it. And maybe create another skeleton. Who knows? Just creative storytelling like that. After killing this thing, one of my players decided I want to cut off the face of the boneless and keep it. Okay. So he told me in a private chat that what he wanted to do was there was a blacksmith in Cedar Fall that kind of insulted him a little bit. Um, he wanted to go and steal all the gold from the blacksmith's safe and leave that face in the safe. Now, as the DM, I'm sitting here like, I don't really want you to do that, but I can't say no. And I didn't tell him that. I didn't tell him I don't want him to do it. I just sat there like, oh God, what the hell are you going to put me through? And so he wanted to do it my last session. They were resting in Cedar Falls, so he went out to do that exact thing. So I had planned in my head, okay, there's a couple rooms, there's 3 rooms in this building. There's the storefront, there's the forge area, and then there's the office which contains the safe. And then I came up with a few DCs. The front door had a simple lock on it with a DC of 12, and the safe would have a DC of 18. I would just let anything happen from there. But what had happened was he approached the front door, he attempted to lockpick the lock, and he rolled a 2. So he failed. He tried again, he rolled a 3, and he failed. And I let him try one last time, and he rolled a 5. He could not get into the front door to do what he wanted. So instead, he took a knife and he pinned the face to the door. I just let it happen. And as he was walking away, or as the morning sun rose in the sky, very simply put, as they were leaving the place from which they were resting, they heard in the distance, "Oh God, who did this to me? Why? Why would someone do this?" Just, just absolute chaos in that corner. So just don't be afraid to roll with it. You know, you are allowed to set the number they have to roll to be the DC. You are allowed to set that whatever you want. From literally 0 to 30 is generally the range you want to do. 30 being air quotes impossible, but possible for higher levels. And DC being of 20 being difficult, really difficult, but not impossible, and a DC of 10 being easily done. Don't be afraid to move those goalposts, man. Like just roll with it. And okay, links. How do you have a productive session 0 if the party isn't meshing together? So that is always going to be a difficult thing. You can't always ensure that the party is going to work well together. Now, if you're playing with adults, then adults have to be adults and they should know to respect each other at the very least as people. Whether or not their characters respect each other, that's a whole different thing. Their characters don't have to respect each other. But as players, it's generally acknowledge that you guys are working together, work together, and play nice. Um, and sometimes if you have to remove a difficult player, you have to remove a difficult player. You are the dungeon master, so you do make the call in that regard. But for me, I give them a common enemy, something they can focus on and they can work towards. I give them a goal right off the bat so that they're not just wandering about not knowing what to do. I give them a hey, there's something interesting here kind of marker. I don't make it super obvious. For example, in this campaign, I said, yeah, there are a few things that you guys can go to. Um, you see in the distance that there is a town about 10 miles out. About 20 miles out, you see a mage tower, but about a mile away, there seems to be an old windmill. I gave him a little bit of a sense. I said, you look up in the sky and the clouds have gotten a bit darker. It looks like it may rain soon. Give them incentive to find shelter. Sorry. Let's see here. Tips for curving meta gaming, piggybacking off links. And if you start with a pre-generated story, like Lost Mine, how quickly do you say start, get through a section? So I cannot speak on behalf of the pre-built campaigns. I tried running Curse of Strahd myself in the past, and I could not keep up with it. Because it doesn't fit my DMing style. And that's okay. You know, those I don't want to say it was too detailed. It's just I'm not someone who's really able to sit down and read an entire book. I kind of like to wing things, and that's just my DMing style. My style doesn't really fit well with pre-built modules, but that's totally fine. That's just my DMing style. Um, what I recommend if you want to do a module, read the whole book, front to back, and just get an idea of the story before you run anything. That way, you're not sitting there. You don't have to memorize it. Let me be very clear. Do not memorize it. You know, this isn't, 10th grade where you have to know Pythagorean's theorem every other second. Just read through it so you can get a general idea of who knows what goes where, and how everything works. And then you should be good to go. Now, in regards to metagaming, there is always going to be metagaming. Always going to be metagaming. You cannot avoid it. And as a player myself, I know I metagame without thinking about it. It's natural for us to do math equations in our head and try to figure things out. That's natural. Like, I know the AC of a skeleton, roughly like 12. I know that. I know that that's the number I have to hit in order to kill the skeleton. That's metagaming, but it's natural. So, how do you combat it? Honestly, I say don't. If your players are metagaming, one thing you could do is pretty much say anything that you say on voice or out loud is in character, unless specifically said otherwise. Like, unless you have a question for the DM, anything you say in character, anything you say is in character. Well, and that kind of forces them to have to not metagame, but that's also not necessarily fun for everyone. It's it's a hmm, it's tricky. Um, but don't be afraid of it. You know, just piecemeal things. Give them just enough information. Utilize your tools as well. Instead of telling the entire party something, if, for example, someone picks up a journal, instead of telling everyone what the journal says, just text that person or message that person what the journal says and let them share. Let them share that information. By restricting who has access to what information, you also kind of prevent metagaming in the sense that it's like, oh, I gave this specifically to player 2, now player 3 is asking about it, but player 3 shouldn't be asking about it. Well, okay, just give it to player 2 in such a way that player 3 can't even see it or know about it. Simple as that. utilize whispers. I'm going to use Critical Role again as example. Critical Role, you'll see sometimes Matt get up from his DM screen, walk over and whisper something in the player's ear. Utilize that. Do that. That's totally okay to do because that helps prevent metagaming. However you wish to implement it, just do it. Oh, all in all, it's going to make for a more enjoyable experience. Because, again, everyone's going to metagame. It's just always about how much information they have and what information they have available to them. Give me 1 second. I'm going to step away for just literally 2 seconds. I'll be right back. Okay. Thank you for waiting. All right. I see Link's asked a question. Okay. How much is too much when creating a homebrew setting? I've been running into trouble figuring out how deep to dive into cities and things like that. I want to have enough content to be prepared, but I don't want to waste time figuring out the entire budget for the town. Players may abandon after 30 minutes. Great question. And that's actually phenomenal that you asked that question because I literally have to do that right now. So I spoke about Cedarfall. Let me show you Eclectic. Now, let me tell you about Eclectic. Eclectic is actually super simple, and it's barely anything I've written on. So you actually asked this question in a situation where I have very little information written about this town. Now, you obviously can see that I have a general structure of this town. Now, I use Incarnate to make my maps. Incarnate has a bunch of these pre-configured like little town icons. What I want you guys to know and what you guys really need to think about is when you're making a map, this little icon that represents Eclectic does not have to be accurate. Think of it like an old style map or an old treasure map. It does not have to be absolutely exact to what is there. Eclectic does not have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 buildings. It actually has like 20. You don't see 20 there. That's fine, because this is not a realistic representation of the town. It is simply a icon of a town. Just like a town is here. However you want to describe that town is still up to you. You are not bound by what it appears to be on the map. So don't feel like this is restricting you whatsoever. Now, I chose this specific one because I wanted this to be more of a religious town. There is a large monastery in the center. So I do see there's 2 other questions. I'll get to you guys in just a moment. Please give me just a few minutes. So, what do I have written for this town? Well, Eclectic is a very religious town. There are a few things in there. There is one general store. Now, I'm not going as deep as like, oh, this is what this town does. This is how much money this town has. You don't really need to do that. If you really want to focus on the economics of your game, sure, no, go ahead. Like, absolutely feel free to do that. But you don't have to, because it's very unlikely that your player is going to walk up and be like, how much money does the town make on average? What's your GDP? Like, that's not really a question your players are going to ask. Nor is it really relevant to whatever campaign, unless it is something you want the players to ask. So in this instance, let me actually bring up the page for this 1 second. So here are my notes for Eclectic right here. This town is a heavily religious one. While not fanatical in nature, their devotion to the dragon god Draco is profound. With a population of mostly dragonborns and tieflings, the inhabitants of Kleptic have a warding charm within the central cathedral. Now, I'm going to be straight. That is literally all I've written on that. I don't know what kind of charm it is. I don't know what the charm looks like. I literally haven't described that. You don't have to. Why did I put this here then? Well, this town doesn't have any walls or anything to protect it from any of the demonic creatures that have started to appear. So how does it stay safe? It has a warding charm within the cathedral, which makes sense. It's a religion structure. Um, People within the town may tell the party of the creation myth of the Isle of Draco and the Ethereum, and how Draco blessed them with the passage to his realm when the Drago family created the gateway to Draco. The Drago family are somewhat seen as the chosen one of Draco. There's a general store here. It's called the Golden Scale General. I just ripped off Dollar Store General. Run by a female tiefling named Tammy Telltale. So when it comes to making stores and stuff like that, I use random generators. I don't go in there and pick specifically what is what in there. Oh well. So I use generators to make my worlds in that sense. So don't be afraid to like randomly generate the contents of a store. That's totally fine to do. It's totally normal. Don't be afraid to do it. Okay, sorry, I have to catch up on a few questions here. Uh, what should you consider when running a horror game in terms of people's limits? Have you ever had to scale back on certain themes mid-game, or do you set up boundaries before the games begin? Um, hmm. So I don't restrict my players in a sense. I don't restrict them to, oh, you've lost this. Be scared. You've lost something that you've relied upon. I don't do that. I focus more on psychological horror. So instead of, ooh, jump scare, big scary bad guy popping out at you. I do more of a example, actually. There is a creature known as the Bagman. One second. This is in, where is it? Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. It is Perform Monsters. This is the Bagman. Now, what is the Bagman? The Bagman is an entity that lives within bags of holding. Sometimes players will see some items disappear within their bag. And at night, if they look into their bag, sometimes they'll see two glowing white eyes peering from the darkness. I highly recommend you read up on this creature. It is a great creature to have, as the bag of holding is generally considered a safe item. Normally people don't think that there's something in their bag of holding because by the rules of the game, this can't live within the bag. But that's the great part. You get to warp the rules of the game to your liking. So the Bagman is an adventurer who escaped within the bag of holding to run away from creatures that had killed his entire party. And he got lost within the bag of holding and has been forever roaming for his party, forever looking for his home, for his way back. But he will never be able to escape. So instead, he will crawl out of bag of holdings and he will drag the nearest adventurer into the bag and bring them somewhere within the world. That is the kind of horror I enjoy. The Bagman has encountered my party already, but my party does not realize it. And the way I've done that is one of my players is an artificer, and he had a book within his bag of holding. And now, mind you, again, all my players have amnesia, so they don't really remember what was in their bag of holding. But I told him something's missing. You don't know what, but something's missing. Specifically, what is missing is a bestiary of his home area. It's missing. And every time he opens that bag of holding, I make him roll a perception check. Whether or not something is actually there or I've actually planned something to be there, I always make him roll a perception check. And now that player does not trust his bag of holding. He's afraid of it. And I've done almost nothing to cause that. You don't want to take things away from your players. What you want to do is make them feel uncomfortable with what is normally safe. People are normally comfortable with the world. Like, for example, just underwear, for example. You're used to underwear. Underwear is part of your life every single day. We all wear underwear. But what if, you know, what if it started doing something that it shouldn't be doing? For example, what if, I don't know why I chose underwear. This is a weird pick. What if for some reason your underwear started going missing and a week later would appear underneath your pillow? It just would be weird. I don't know why I chose underwear as an example. It's not a great example, but it's just doing something it's not supposed to do is exactly how you can incorporate horror into your game. Now, David asks, how faithful do I try to be to publish uh, Wizard of the Coast content? Honestly, I don't. I use it as inspiration. So the Bagman is a great example of something I'm rolling with. But here's the great thing. If you actually look at this, this is the section for the Bagman. All it is a story. There's no stats for this thing. There's no encounter. There's nothing here. It is just a story. Because this whole section is actually all about creating your own horror monsters. 1 second. So, sorry for that. This is all about, creating your own monsters. If you don't have Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft, I recommend it. It's a very fun read. Really goes deep into those horror aspects of a campaign. I will show you a creature I've created based off a few inspirations I've had. So 1 second here as I find it. Homebrew, there it is. My homebrew creations. Before I delve into this, though, let me just check the stream. See. Okay. Okay. Guero, what is the best way to, sorry if I say your names incorrectly. What is the best way to run games if you have a group that's very inconsistent in meeting? Players are hesitant with one-shots because they're super into their characters, but to catch everyone up after a long time away takes too much time away from the game. That's a really hard one to say because I personally have not encountered that myself. It really depends. One of the difficult parts I found with running a long form campaign is you need to keep up the momentum. When the momentum of people wanting to play this campaign dies, the campaign can as well. But that doesn't mean throw away all of your content. Let me be very clear on that. I mentioned the Isle of Draco towards the beginning of this. The Isle of Draco was my previous campaign. In fact, if I... Oops, I did not mean to close that. If I pull up the world of Ethereum here, oh, 1 second. Here it goes. You'll see this. This is the Isle of Draco. This is actually one of my first maps I made back in 2017. I saved all the content I wrote for this. And while I am not currently using this, things that happened in this world are currently affecting my current campaign. And that's totally okay to recycle old campaign. This map tool was Campaign Cartographer. It's a bit old. Honestly, it's like a CAD program. it has more in common with 3ds Max and AutoCAD than it does normal um map making software. I highly recommend Incarnate. That's what I use now. It's super easy to make maps with that. Yep, and thank you, Sam, for posting the link to that. All right, let's see. Okay, so for the town, do I provide a full picture of my town? No, I don't. So I had thought about that. Actually, let me swap to my desktop real quick to show you where I keep my files. So I had thought about that. I had thought about having an actual map for this town, specifically for Cedarfall. I thought about having a map for that, but I decided not to. So this is the map I created for it. There, there is what I believe to be a line where you might be giving too much information. Players don't need to know the exact layout of the streets. Players don't need to know exactly what building is how far away. Let them imagine it. Let them imagine the streets, the buildings, what they look like. Let them imagine what it looks like. One of the most powerful things you have in your arsenal as a dungeon master is your player's imagination. Your players could imagine the world more grandiose than you could ever depict, and let that run wild. Don't be afraid to withhold visual details, because withholding information can sometimes make it that much more impactful. So I threw this away because while this gives me a great idea of what the town looks like, I would never ever have to use this. There's no situation where I'll need this. There just isn't. Because very easily, I can, right now, let me give you an example. Looking at this map, you enter the town of Cedarfall. You notice a few of the buildings are in ruins with boards nailed to the windows and to the doors. There isn't too many folk, but you do notice a few older individuals who are carrying wheelbarrows off to the farms. As you walk down, you notice there to be a couple of shops. A there is a butcher's and a blacksmith's. There is a center in the middle of the town, what looks to be a town square. There is a gazebo with a few chairs on the inside and on the outside facing the gazebo. This looks to be a place of gathering. Now, if I remove that map and I do the whole thing over again, you enter the town of Cedarfall. The buildings are, a few of the buildings seem to be destroyed, unprepared, broken up. There are boarded windows and doors on a few of the abandoned houses. Most of the houses are in good shape and are just fine. You don't see many people. There are a few older folk who are carrying wheelbarrows out to the various farms around the town. And there are two shops that you notice: a blacksmith and a butcher's. In the middle of the town, there is a what you presume to be a gathering center, a gazebo. There are chairs on the inside and on the outside facing inward. Without the map there, your mind is free to construct whatever you believe this place looks like. Use that to your advantage. I'm not able to draw beautiful, intricate city maps. I wish I was, but I'm not. So instead, I use my words to craft that image. Here is another example. Da-da-da. I created this tavern here for use in this campaign. And as soon as I finished it, I threw it out. I decided, nope, wasn't going to use this. If you guys want this, it's actually on my Twitter. You can download it and you can use this. I very meticulously placed these the chairs and whatnot so that players could actually use their tokens and sit in the chairs. The stage is there. There's you know there's a storage area for extra chairs for if everyone wants to open up the door. There is a staircase leading upstairs to the private rooms. There's a bar. There's where all the wine is. There's where they prepare the food. There's where they store the food, extra wine, another storage area, and a hidden cellar. I put a lot of effort into this and I threw it all away. Why? I could have done all of this with words. I just. Why sit down and create all of this when you can let the characters dream it up themselves? When you're using a map like this, you actually restrict yourself to what is within the tavern. When you're using words, you can change things on the fly. You can just straight up add another room entirely to this tavern. You can't do that with a physical map. If you have a physical map, you are 100% stuck with what it is. Yeah, you can edit the map later, but with words, you can change it right then and there. And that's the same thing with a town. If you create a map, you're restricted to what the map looks like. But if you use your words, you can add as much stuff to that town as you want. You could, instead of saying, that, oh, there is only a butcher's and a blacksmith, you can go on and say that there's a few other shops kind of off the main street. A few stalls here or there. Don't restrict yourself by creating those maps. I'm not saying entirely don't do it. If you enjoy making those kinds of maps, go for it. Do it. DM the way you want to DM. There is no wrong way to being a dungeon master. Whatever way you prefer and whatever way you figure out works for you, go with it. I'm sharing with you guys what I found has worked for me. And I'm going to be honest, what works for me may not always work for you guys. And that's okay. That's totally fine. We're all different people and we all think differently and we all work differently. So there's no right or wrong way, in my opinion. And that's the beauty of Dungeons and Dragons. You're free to create whatever you want and however you want. So, don't be intimidated to create too much or to create too little. In reality, there is never too much information, nor is there ever really too little information. Again, back to the cemetery I talked about earlier, I had absolutely nothing. I had zero information on this. I planned nothing, and yet I was able to squeeze 30 minutes out of that cemetery just by adding a couple ghosts in when my players encountered it. And I can build upon that. I can build upon those ghosts there. Don't be afraid. Just have fun with it. Let's see. Have any tips for motivations? My players stumble on a hidden, unexplored dungeon with treasure and low-level monsters at first, and they say, that looks dangerous, let's go back to the town. They will do things if an NPC offers golden items, otherwise the main thing they do is plan how to break into places to steal golden items. Oh, I love it. How do I get more authentic adventuring / convince them or get rewards by playing the game? So that is where something I mentioned earlier, and you may have not been there. That is where the whole aspect of cooperative storytelling comes in. You can absolutely go ahead and create the most complex dungeon with all these puzzles and wonderful art and depictions and descriptions of what each room is. You can absolutely do that, and it could probably never be explored. Everything you create in Dungeons and Dragons has that risk of never being explored whatsoever. Now, the important thing is if you really do want them to go there, don't force them. In this instance, what you can do is okay, they went back to town, right? Well, do this. You can either say a historian is traveling through town and needs a party to investigate a nearby ruins and clear it of any monsters and is willing to pay gold for it. That's one option. Another option is a curse has befallen someone within the town, and legend says that that curse is delivered by a god, and it just so happens the temple to that god is somewhere nearby. Or the town has been ransacked by goblins over the past few days, and we need someone to go take care of it. Hey, you adventurer, you look like you are, powerful enough with the sword. I'll give you 500 gold to go take care of these goblins. Feel free to twist things and have fun with it. Don't feel like you're restricted to what you write, because as long as the player, here's one of my golden rules: as long as the players have not seen it yet, it is not set in stone. That unexplored dungeon with treasure, you can change that to be whatever you want. If they have not gone into that dungeon, screw it. You can you can literally turn that into like a mine, like an abandoned mine. Reuse your assets, reuse your plans. Don't feel like you're restricted to what you created being specifically an unexplored dungeon. Feel free to warp the story to whatever you want people to participate in. That's the great part about D&D. You're able to move the goalposts to fit whatever story you want to tell. And you're able to work with your players to tell that story. Now, honestly, it sounds like you have a really fun group going there when they want to steal golds and items. Um, Here is another thing you could do. Is a very rich aristocrat is traveling through town, and you hear whispers that they might be staying at this inn or this other inn, and you don't know yet. And the players may start to devise plans to steal whatever riches that guy has. Um, start having fun with it. If the party enjoys stealing stuff, don't be afraid to write content that, you know, appeals to that. If they want to keep stealing from the rich, giving to the poor, just make more rich people to steal from. One second. Karka, I'm gonna just check this. So lean into the gold rewards if that's what you want. You can. Absolutely you can do that. But don't overdo it. There is some self-restraint you have to apply. Um One good thing to do here, you don't want to just throw gold at the players. What you also want to do is give them a reason to spend that gold. Like, oh, there's a shop in this one town that has a article of armor that's like 5,000 gold. Give them a goal. Just always write up a goal, even whatever it might be. The important key with that is talk to your players. Talk to your players and see what it is they want. See what it is they're interested in, and work with them to write the story. I have a player who he wants essentially, I forget what it's called, but it's like a mini bag of holding that you're able to put within your sleeve, and only you have access to it. And when anyone inspects it, it's just a pocket. Um, and he wants to get that. And I said, you know what? That sounds awesome. Absolutely. I'm going to put it somewhere within this world, and you have to find it. That gives them incentive to explore the world as a player to hopefully find that item they want. So, yeah, just don't be afraid to work with your players to make something awesome. All right, Karka, how involved do you become with NPCs? Do you ever use NPCs to let party know how imaginative they can get with DD? Yes. I have a very fun. So I have a token blacksmith character that I like to throw in. And this blacksmith is a dragonborn blacksmith, but he is 4 foot tall. He's a fully grown dragonborn. He's just really short, like really short, because it subverts expectations. People expect dragonborns to be, quite tall and foreboding. But as someone in real life, I am 5 foot tall. Um, and people are like, "Wow, you're that small." Well, have fun with that. Subvert expectations and have fun with it. So, for example, you enter the blacksmith. You hear a little bell, ding, da, ding, da, ding, as the door opens, alerting the blacksmith to your presence. You look around the main store as you hear the, give me a moment. Ding, ding, ding. I'm coming, I'm coming. And you see various swords, shields, armor, weapons of all kinds hung up around the shop. And you see the door to the back room open and close, no one walking through it. And you hear, and you watch as this. I help you with what you looking for. Don't be afraid to create weird characters. Again, Critical Role does it all the time. And yeah, I'm mentioning Critical Role a lot because I've been watching it a lot recently. And Matt Mercer is phenomenal. But you also notice that all of his shopkeepers are fun. He, he a lot of people will often make grouchy shopkeepers that don't really want to be bothered with business. Shopkeepers build shops to sell stuff. That's what they want to do. So work with that. Create an NPC who maybe is not super what's it called? Maybe is not super involved in the story, but is there. And the players, if they choose, can expand their relationship with them. And as they expand their relationship with them, you can expand the story around this character. You don't have to have this dude's entire backstory written out. Like this blacksmith character, I just described the character and what he does. He could have a family. He could not have a family. He could have a wife and kids. He could not. They could have died 5 years ago. Like it doesn't have to be decided until you want it to be. For example, if my players walk up and be like, yeah, how's your family? Right then and there, depending on the mood of the conversation or the current progression of the story, that is what I will let determine that character's family. Like, okay, if something big just happened, like say the town was just attacked, oh, well, it's a bit of a sore topic. At the moment, my wife, she died in the attack last night. May she rest in peace, but I can't afford to close up the shop. I need to keep the doors open. Need to take care of my child. And if the players ask, "Oh, what's the child's name?" Don't be afraid to literally look around your room. Addie, Arizona, iced tea. Don't be afraid to not be prepared. Like, um, straight up. Um, so when I named these, like, you could probably see, um, that the names are not super creative. Mandible Mountain, for example, it's Mandible, but sorry, it's a mountain. I like to use alliteration. I like to do I forget what I think it's alliteration. But for example, I have a player character called William Wilder. Uh that's one of my characters in when I'm a player. And I really like to use that kind of name, like names that kind of roll off the tongue like that. So Mandible Mountain. It just sounded cool, and I decided to use it. And Siren Squalor. I don't know where the hell I came up with that name, but I decided I wanted a group of islands that were kind of small off in the distance What's something a sailor usually encounters, or what's a folklore of a sailor? Siren. A siren is very much in tune with a sailor's folklore. What's a word that goes with that? Siren squalor. It doesn't have to make sense. Like, that's the awesome part about locations. Their names never have to make sense at all. It could uh, when you name a location in your world, it could be based off what's in that location. It could be based off what's surrounding that location or something that has happened in that location. You know, um, you don't have to just think of creative names. The entirety of the northeast coast of America has names straight up pulled from England because New England is literally just taking the names from England and reusing them. There is Yorkshire, now New York. There is Jersey, now New Jersey. Don't be afraid to get lazy with your names. Not every name in your world has to be this grandiose fantasy name. If you want a guy named Jeff, you can absolutely have a guy named Jeff. Like, don't be afraid to do that. It doesn't take away from your story. Have fun with your names. Yeah, New Jeffland. If you and here's the awesome thing. If you want to have fun with it, feel free to take a stupid name like that. And I'm not saying that's a stupid idea. I'm just like, that's a fun name. Feel free to take that name, New Jeffland. Change a couple of the letters. Just New Jeffland. Yes, New Jeffland. Like, just change it a little bit. Just a little bit. And boom, you have a fantasy name. You don't have to be super creative. Like literally in the Isle of Draco here, I I grew up in Philadelphia. That the original name for that middle island there was Creme. Crem. You want to know why? Because there's a cream cheese named Philadelphia. It doesn't need to make sense. Literally, you can just do whatever you want and have fun with it. Um, I eventually just gave in and called it Philadelphia, and this little town to the west of it, West Philadelphia, just to have fun with it. And it didn't detract from the story whatsoever. My players had fun with it, and they loved it. It did not distract them. It did not take away from the story. It it was fun because here's the thing: at the very beginning, if it's a silly name, they'll laugh about it and they'll have fun with it. But as they are exposed to it, it's just gonna be another silly name. It's not gonna be um it's not gonna take them out of the moment. That's the fun part. Exposure leads to normalcy. So, if you have trouble thinking of names, that's okay. Don't be afraid to reuse things. Like this whole island, it's named the Isle of Draco because I was so lazy at naming things, I decided to take my last name, Dragoni, which is my last name. My last name is literally Dragon. I decided to take my last name and just name the island after it. That I just did that, and it turned into this really cool thing. Was it really on the nose for people who knew me personally? Absolutely, but until I told you guys this, you wouldn't have known. Um, you know, just have fun with it. Like, if you want to ask where the name Isle of Mephisto comes from, it literally comes from a ska song by Streetlight Manifesto called Mephisto's Cafe. Or no, it's we're going down, down, down to Mephisto's Cafe. I'm forgetting the song name, but it literally goes, "We're going down, down, down to Mephisto's Cafe." Um, shoot, I'm looking up. Oh, it is down, down, down to Mephisto's Cafe. That is the song's name. Great song, by the way. If you enjoy ska, highly recommend it. Street Manifesto was phenomenal. Um, I literally named this entire island off of a ska song because I really like the song and I want to have fun with it. Yeah. I hope that gives a little bit of insight into how I name things at least. I don't really remember where that point started from. Oh, right. Short, stout dragonborns. Now we're coming back to circle. So don't be afraid to just create things that are fun. Even in a serious campaign like this. Like, this is a psychological horror campaign. And yet I have fun characters in this campaign. You don't actually, what I want to say is this: you can absolutely create a horror story that is just pure dark and gloomy. But if you create a world that's dark and gloomy, that's not fun. If you want to play on horror, you need to balance it with light-hearted moments. This isn't a horror game in a sense like um what was it? Outlast. This isn't Outlast, where you're very slowly creeping towards something. But even in horror games like Outlast, you have calm, peaceful areas where you're not going to be attacked, and you might have quirky characters. Outlast is very terrifying in its game, but you always have areas where you can breathe. Always do that if you plan to do horror. Always make sure you give your players places where they can actually be safe. Because then, when there's an area they feel safe in, that gives you another target to destroy and make them feel no longer safe and add horror to the campaign. And yes, I'm a monster for thinking of that. But for example, Cedarfall. Cedarfall is a very, very normal town with some abandoned buildings, right? Going back to the homebrew character question that was asked a while ago, underneath the town of Cedarfall is what I call a flare hydra. Now, what is a flare hydra? Well, I before I created this campaign, I was having fun and looking up the most terrifying creatures within Dungeons and Dragons, and there was two creatures that popped up. One was the false hydra. If you don't know what the false hydra is, let me show it to you. The false hydra looks like this, or at least this is one artist's interpretation of a false hydra. And this is specifically from Comet Lord Miniatures. Really awesome place where you can get really awesome miniatures ready to 3D print whenever you want. I'm not sponsored. I'm just giving credit to the creators. They are creepy as hell. I don't know who created the false hydra, but essentially what it is a creature that is able to erase itself from your memory. If you've ever seen Doctor Who, think the Silence. They are able to just erase themselves from your memory, but also erase other things from your memory. Anything they know about, they are able to erase from your memory. So, if you pass by a false hydra in the middle of a street, you would not know because it erased itself from your memory. How do you use a false hydra within your campaign? Well, every session you have leading up to meeting the false hydra is fake. What I mean by that is every session that your players are playing is not actually what happened. It is what the characters remember happening after their minds were altered by the false hydra. And it gets real meta there. Because your players, their memory is every session. You can't just drop a false hydra in session 1 and the players forget about it. So what do? The false hydra doesn't exist until it exists. And every single session leading up to that point, you reveal one of my favorite stories of a false hydra is that after killing or after finally realizing this false hydra and figuring out what it is, the party has found a notebook and a bag at the end of an empty bed in a room that a player had slept in. Player doesn't know why they decided to get a room with two beds. They look through this journal and it describes every single thing the party has done up till this point. And in the margins, like, we had a lot of fun doing this. I really hope my brother is getting stronger. My brother got hit really hard today and he almost got killed. I'm really worried about him. Have that brother be one of the players. The player is going to be like, who the hell wrote this? What the hell is this? And so is the character. Because the character doesn't know they had a sister or a brother. Because their sister or brother was killed by the false Hydra and was erased from their memory. So, underneath Cedarfall is a false Hydra. And has been slowly tearing away at the town. And my players have encountered this thing already, and they don't know it. Because there's another creature called an Ublex. So let me look up an Ublex if you don't know what it is. So an Ublex creature looks like this. This is an Elder Ublex. And fun fact about this, this was actually created by a child who won the Make-A-Wish Foundation. He wanted to work with Wizards of the Coast, or he or she, I forget exactly who it was, but they wanted to work with Wizards of the Coast to create a new creature inspired by the Mind Flayers. And so they created an Ublex. What is an Ublex? It is an ooze that is essentially created from experimentation in necromancy, but also created from Mind Flayers as a way to consume individuals. And as soon as an individual is consumed into the Ublex, it becomes part of the Ublex, and the Ublex is able to completely replicate that person, their identity, their personality, their thoughts, their memories, their speech patterns, every little thing about them, and is able to be completely in their place. Now, this entity has to still be attached to the Ublex, and it's usually done through a tendril that's impenetrable. And it's terrifying because the goal of the Ublex is to lure people in to be consumed and to grow stronger so that it may return to the Mind Flayers with all of these souls and personalities and minds to feed the Mind Flayers. It's terrifying. So what do you do with two terrifying creatures that don't necessarily have things in common, but you want to be that monster of a person and create something absolutely horrifying? Well, introducing the Flare Hydra. The Flare Hydra is based off a false Hydra with a few sprinkles of an Ublex tossed in. Instead of just being a creature that you forget about because it erases your memory of it, it is a creature that will not only consume you and your memories and your thoughts and your entire person, but it can also then imitate anything it has consumed. In order, and it is straight up a mix of the two. The two terrifying aspects of these two creatures mixed. And the whole idea is to just create this feeling of unease. In my campaign, in Cedarfall, they met a blacksmith. Or not the blacksmith, sorry. They met a butcher. And the butcher was actually the Flare Hydra. Because the Flare Hydra had killed the butcher and had taken over their position. One of the things I had allured to this is that the butcher has resorted to making jerky instead of fresh cut meats. Why? Because the Flare Hydra can't really travel too far outside the town to hunt anymore. So instead of, kind of letting their stock run out and being suspicious, they're instead turning all their stock into jerky for the winter, which is a logical thing the butcher would do. So we're putting in those pieces of the story. We're laying those seeds to grow into larger things. So my players are currently playing through this campaign unaware of that entire thing just lurking beneath the ground. And I will reveal it to them at some point later down the line when they're powerful enough, of course, because this thing is powerful. Anyone have any questions on anything I've spoken about in the past 20 minutes? Oh man, I need water.
Yeah, I don't see any new questions from the last little bit here.
I know I've been going on for a little bit longer. We're probably going to be wrapping up within the next 30 minutes or so. I'm going to still be here working on content for another hour or so after that. But, you know, for the event that we have planned, so we have about 30 minutes left. So I guess we'll get into some meat and potatoes here of what I'm now doing to plan for the next session. So my players just explored the ruins here at Rheinkar. Now, what that has done is there are these archways throughout the world. These archways are dimension doors that lead to a alternate universe. So they have achieved the ability to activate these portals and journey through them. So next stop for them is most likely going to be Duskwood. I've already written content for Duskwood. Essentially, Duskwood was the first town to fall victim to the Flare Hydra. And the townsfolk, after realizing what was going on, tried to burn down the town in order to kill the Flare Hydra, but they failed in doing so. And as a result, they destroyed the town, and everyone was killed by the Hydra. There are some evidence of that. There's some graffiti that the players are going to be able to find. They're not really going to make any sense of it, but it all points back to, the Flare Hydra existing. But nothing definitive, just hints. I believe I have it here. Let's see here. Worlds of Ethereum, Alpha Mephisto. Where is it? Articles. Ah, Duskwood. So, right here, just I briefly wrote, and this is just stuff the players can actually see. So, an abandoned town with a collapsed dock, Duskwood used to be the primary port of Mephisto until the fog rolled in. Quick TLDR, the players arrived shortly after a very thick fog surrounded the entire island, and the main bridge leading to the Isle of Draco collapsed. Anyone attempting to leave the fog is essentially killed by mysterious means. What those mysterious means are yet, I have not decided. But that's essentially what the fog is. So no one knows what happened in this town. In my DM notes at the bottom here, I have written out a bunch of stuff. So, all players must make a wisdom saving throw upon entering. Anyone rolling higher than 15 will see the shifting, smooth black rock bursting from the ground and buildings. Shadow like figures flicker in and out of view. The black rock slides through itself as if incorporeal. It looks as smooth as obsidian. Now, I'm going to be real. I've been playing the game Control recently, and I really love some of the elements in that story, so I am taking a page from its book, and I'm using it here. Does that knowing that, does that ruin some of the magic? No, because you're just taking inspiration. I'm not stealing the story of Control and using it as my own. I really like the material that they use, that they call black rock in Control, and I love how it just shifted as if it was a fluid yet solid at the same time. And I love the strange nature of that. So I decided to use something extremely similar, and I call it the Black Rock because I have no better descriptor of it. So that is kind of in this town. That is alluring towards the merger of the Nightmare Realm and this plane of existence. After a few seconds, Reality snaps back, and the black rock is gone, as well as the ghosts. So that's actually something I added on shortly after writing everything else here. Duskwood was the first to fall victim to the Flare Hydra. The players will find various messages scratched into the town structures. There's a letter saying, "Hey, we're sorry, we are no longer here. We moved to other towns." And they will find books. They'll find other journals, stuff like that. I have content written here, and this is fine. They're going to find this. This might take them about an hour or more to go through. Hopefully, it could take them 30 minutes. Who knows? So, the next thing to plan is this area here. They're heading to Eclectic. So, what do I have for Eclectic? Let us see here. So, I have to recreate the store here. So let me show you the process I have for that. So I use this application. 1 second. Pull it up here. 5E Magic Shop is the program I use for generating shops. So I can go in here and let's pop that out so I can full screen that. Village has a bunch of presets, and I just click generate. And what it'll do is it'll give me, so let's do a magic shop for a large city. Generate it, boom. This shop has a mace, a rapier, mauls, breastplates, longsword, just everything you need. And it gives you the price for those items. Really, really useful. Now up here, you can set the markup. Now, one thing to note, whenever you create a shop, don't just use the base price for the items. Do a markup based off the kind of town that it's in. For me, I'm going to do a 20% markup. So a mace, which is normally 1,000 gold, is now 1,200, or plus one mace to be precise. The reason you do that is think about the store. They need to make a profit, right? So that's what they're going to do. So my party needs potions, so I'm going to add potions of healing to the results. Let's do a small town store. Now let's do, let's do a small town store. So we generate this. All right, potion of greater healing, and some other things. Let's go back. Let's do a large town. Add potions of healing. Generate. All right, that's a lot better. So got a couple great axes, short swords, crossbows, rapiers, scroll of alarm, and other stuff like that. Super useful. But let's see. I actually want more of a general store. Let's see here. Can I set that? Ah, here it is. General store. Really useful. Add potions of healing. Generate. There we go. That's more like it. So this is more of a general store. Amulet, ball bearings, bucket, carnelian, other things. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to save the store, and I'm going to go back to here and copy the name. I named this Golden Scale General. And I'm going to just type that in, save it, boom. I'm going to copy this and paste that here so that I have a bookmark for that. And the fun part about this is I'm actually able to give this link to my players so they can browse the shop, or I just role play it. I prefer to role play it myself, but have fun with this. This is fun. Just have fun with it. Use tools you can find to your advantage. You don't have to sit there and plan out every single item that goes into a store. You don't have to sit there and price up every little thing. There are tools out there that can help you with that. Feel free to use those tools. Don't be afraid to use them. So now I have an inventory for that store. I don't have to worry about that. I can go in and add specific things, like I want to add robes or a couple scrolls of healing because it is in a religious town. I can go in and do that. I am fairly happy with what I have for this town. You might be thinking I'm crazy. I have barely more than a paragraph of content for this town. I don't need anything else. I have a store and I have a base idea of what's going on. Now, let's say, for example, my players walk in and say, we'd like to talk to the head priest of the church. Okay. Dragonborn in very pure white robes with gold trim steps out from the cathedral. Ah, how may I help you? My name is Cornelius. Just literally pick a random name that you feel might work. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. I just thought of Cornelius literally out of nowhere. I just thought of it. Um, it's the first name that came to my head. Um, it could literally be anything else. It could be Jeff. My name's Jeff. I am the priest of this establishment. How may I help you? Like, seriously, have fun with it. He doesn't need to have a purpose as to why he sounds the way he sounds. He doesn't need to have a purpose as to why he was named Jeff. You know, you can just say his parents were lazy and wanted to name him Jeff or something like that. Just have fun with it. You know, you don't have to have gritty stories and serious people and NPCs that don't take crap from no. Just have fun. Dungeons and Dragons is meant to be fun. Don't be afraid to have fun. Let me just check the Twitch chat here. Yes. Mac Daniel said in the Twitch chat, you could also have items in your mind that are in special stock for that store if the team hits a great roll on the owner. For example, in the other town, Crestwood, up here in the north, there's going to be a magic shop there that has that one special item I mentioned earlier, that hidden pocket in the sleeve. It's going to be there. And it's going to be, essentially you ask the shopkeep, what do you got special? Oh, I have this little thing I've been working on. No, it's you know, you know how kids like to play tricks on each other and like, hide coins behind the ears and stuff like that. Maybe they can't use magic per se, but like, sleight of hand tricks. Yeah. Well, I created a pocket goes into your sleeve to make those tricks easier. You can like fit a book in it. Oh, that's pretty useful. How much? Well, the enchantment's a little pricey. Maybe like 700 gold. I literally just made the price up on the spot there. I don't know what a normal bag of holding actually costs, but since this item is based off a bag of holding in this case, it can only hold one item about the size of a spell book. So I would say, based off its extremely reduced capacity to that of a bag of holding, I would say make it 1/5 the price. Though feel free to upcharge it a little bit because it is also something where if anyone else looks at that pocket, it no one can see what's in it. It's just a pocket. It's an empty pocket. Feel free to do that. Feel free to upcharge the price because it is a unique item. Again, that goes back to working with your players to create these unique items. Figure out what it is they want to see and what they want to do in their campaign, or in your campaign rather, and write the story to fit it. You know, if your players really want to kill a dragon, maybe make your big bad guy a dragon. And it's like, maybe you have to kill a few dragons before you kill the big bad one. Like it's Tiamat, you know, have fun with it. Back to the question earlier, because someone said, how faithful am I to Witch of the Coast? And I said, I'm not very faithful to it because I use it as inspiration, not necessarily what I specifically have to do. Tiamat is currently within lore on one of the 9 realms of hell. I forget exactly which one. I don't know it off the top of my head, believe it's the first level, and they're like leading the charge against the armies. Because I know the first level of Hell is like a battlefield against two opposing factions or something like that. I have not read into it very much, so I could be completely wrong. Don't quote me on that. Um, but that's where Tiamat is apparently supposed to be. Who cares? It's your world. If you want Tiamat running Tiamat's coffee shop, do it. Have fun with that. Like, you can still have a serious campaign and have fun things. You know? This is a horror campaign that I'm running. And yet, I am making sure my players are having fun. I'm making sure that this world is a world that they're going to enjoy. I'm making sure that um yeah, actually Bray makes a great point there. Sorry. Um yeah, no one says your campaign takes place in the same time, space, or even plane of existence. And I like you nailed it right on the head. The reason I created the Ethereum is because of that. I when I created a bunch of characters, before I was a dungeon master, I had a lot of characters that had lineage. William Wilder, he is a tiefling druid that comes from a line of pure blood high elves. Why is he a tiefling if his mother and father, biological mother and father, are high elves? Well, because he was cursed as a child. But his grandfather, the head of the house, was so disgusted by his curse that they banished William to the forest. And so he, instead of learning to be a historian rogue like the rest of the Wilder family, he learned to be a druid by living off the land. Um, so I had to explain how all of these characters were in all these different campaigns, or at least I felt like I had to. So I created the Ethereum. The Ethereum being a plane of existence that exists beyond normal planes of existence and beyond essentially time and space, which is why my characters, can appear in whatever campaign I want. It just makes sense. Um, and it's fun because then whatever campaign I join, at least for me, I only know what my character knows, which is almost nothing. And I can get really involved and really sink my teeth into that because I don't have to read a 4-page novel on the history of this world because I'm not from this world, if that makes sense. um it goes back to the thing I said earlier. I only know what my character knows, so don't be afraid to play with space or time or planes of existence. While there are set planes of existence, it is your world. You are the dungeon master. You do not have to abide by the rule book whatsoever. The first rule of Dungeons and Dragons within the Dungeon Master's rulebook is you are literally the defining rule maker. Whatever rule the handbook says, you can override and change at will. Now, don't do that constantly because that's probably going to anger some people. But like, if you and your party decide that you're going to roll with this rule in this specific way, roll with it that way. Don't change it 50 times. Roll with that. Even if it goes against what the spell says or what the rules say, if that's how you've been running it, just roll with it because that's fun. Do what is fun. Don't be afraid to change the rules to make them more fun. And the same thing goes for the lore. Don't be afraid to change the lore to make it more fun. For example, Dragon God Draco in my world, he is the god of all dragons. Whereas Tiamat is kind of the god of all dragons in normal Dungeons and Dragons lore, I think. Again, I haven't read too much on Tiamat. Um, but I kind of said, fuck it. I excuse my language. I wanted to make my own pantheon of dragons. So I had fun with it. I made my own pantheon. And as a dungeon master, you're completely allowed to do that. Have fun with it. You know? We're about 7 minutes till 2 hours, I think. Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, last chance, everyone. If you got any questions in Twitch or Discord, feel free to post them.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a quick one. How do you determine the scale for your maps, like the distance between the towns and stuff?
I don't. um, it's funny you mentioned that. So last night, I sadly my server, I lost all the data on my server, and the one thing that was included in that data was this world's scale, which sucks because I had finally gotten the world to be of scale of which I was happy with. This is what I recommend when you're trying to scale your world. Make a map like this. Don't worry about the distance between objects. Don't worry about that. When you start to play the world, how ask yourself this: how long do you want it to take the party to get somewhere? Once you can answer that question, then you know how large the world is. Based off how long it takes from my players to get from the windmills to Cedarfall, defines how large the rest of the world is. The great thing about maps, especially world maps, is that they don't have to be accurate, because old maps were insanely inaccurate. If you ever look at an old map of the East Coast of the United States before satellites were a thing, it is highly inaccurate. But that's okay, because it didn't have to be. It was just showing you where generally things were. Feel free to use that to your advantage, because your party doesn't have satellite imagery. They don't know exactly how far something is from here. Have fun with it. Like, I know I had a grid style and I had exact distance for all these things. I'm throwing that away. I'm not going to sit there and recreate the scale of this world. I'm just going to have fun with it and say, yeah, it's going to take this many days to get there. It's going to take this many hours. I'm throwing away my whole scale and just replacing it with however long I want it to take. Okay. I got one question here from Quill. A Quill. Sorry if I said it wrong. Any suggested quick reference or guides for getting started with online gaming? Used to use map tools, looked at Roll20 and Foundry, still kind of trying to find something agnostic to various platforms. So I have a lot of experience with Roll20. Roll20 is phenomenal. I will say though, after all my years of being with it, it hasn't updated a lot. They've made a lot of stability improvements, but as an overall, I want to say within the past 5 years, it hasn't changed too much. And I'm not super happy with that. Now, if you're new to DMing and online DMing, it is phenomenal. I highly recommend it. It is a great tool. If you want to do more advanced things like dynamic lighting and stuff like that, I would say avoid the subscription for Roll20. Instead, look at Foundry Tabletop. Foundry Tabletop is a one-time purchase instead of subscription, and essentially does everything that Roll20 does, but with more customization. Now, I'm going to say this straight up. Foundry Tabletop is a little intimidating at first. There's a lot of things that go into it, and you may want to wait a while before jumping into there, or watch some tutorial videos. After making the switch, I prefer Foundry Tabletop myself, because I can import all my content from D&D Beyond into Foundry Tabletop. So I really like that. That makes it a lot easier for me to run my games. And then I don't have to buy two different compendiums of content, because unless you use a extension in your browser, you can't import your content from D&D Beyond into Roll20, which is a pain in the butt. because then, oh, I have Curse of Strahd on D&D Beyond, but I don't have the maps and stuff in Roll20. Oh, I have to buy Curse of Strahd in Roll20 in order to play Curse of Strahd in Roll20. That's not fun. That's not fun at all. With Foundry, I'm able to import all that stuff and just play Curse of Strahd within Foundry. It's fun. It's great. But I say if you're new, stick to Roll20. Stick to Roll20. Get used to how online platforms work, and then tinker with other things. Foundry Tabletop, I believe, actually has a free trial, so you can actually experiment with it without dedicating yourself to it. Just do your research, look things up, read up on things, and don't be like me and see a map tool that is a one-time cost of like $200 and it's like, wow, these guys are promising a lot of things, and decide, yeah, I'm gonna buy this before trying it. And then you're out $200 and realize, oh, I just bought alpha software. That's not great. I did this maybe a month ago. Uh, learn from my mistakes, people.
Yeah, we also a few DMs in the community did some walkthroughs of Roll20, Foundry, and Astral Tabletop so far. So they did some pretty deep dives into how to like get started with them and everything like that.
Yeah, and yeah, Quill. No one would ever do that. I've done it twice in my life. The first one being campaign cartographer, because at the time there was a few years ago there wasn't really intuitive map makers on the level of like what you see here. Like, I made this map myself with Incarnate, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. But looking back to what I made with campaign cartographer, I can tell you which one I like better between the two. And that's because Incarnate actually had a free version that I tinkered with. I really liked it, and I decided to subscribe to it. So yeah, try before you buy. Try before you buy. Try before you buy. Don't spend hundreds of dollars on things that you don't know if you're going to like them or not. Do your research. Be smart. And that is going to be the last helpful tips I have for tonight.
Cool.
Okay, bye. I'm kidding. Thank you guys so much for chilling out. Thank you so much for listening to my ramblings. I've had a lot of fun monologuing for the past 2 hours. If you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to direct message me. My DMs are always open, and I'm always happy to provide some insight, some answer some questions when I'm available. And I'm always writing content for this campaign. I write content every Sunday, so we might be hosting more of these later down the line. But if we aren't, I still kind of hop into one of the channels and start streaming it, so you can always hop in, ask me questions, etc. Don't be afraid. Yeah. Oh, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, if you want to get some free maps, feel free to follow me at Anthony R. Dragoni, and that's dragon with E at the end. That is my Twitter, Anthony R. Dragoni. I post free to use maps there, maps I created that I let other people use. The next map that's going up on my Twitter will be the Mage Tower that I recently ran for this campaign. It's a 3-tiered tower that has a handful of interesting bits and bobs within it. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, roll on. Or that was corny.
That was great. Thank you, Anthony, so much. A lot of great questions too. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We're gonna turn the Twitch stream off here, and the VOD will be on Twitch, and then we can send it over to YouTube as well. So if there's a section you want to check back on or anything like that, you can do that. And yeah, Anthony, if you want to send me your like Twitter link and stuff like that, or you can post it in the Discord chat as well if you want, so people can track you down there. And of course, Anthony's here in the Discord server, so you can, if you got extra questions and stuff, make sure you can ping him there. And If you don't have the DM role, you can get that from the Sign a Roll channel, and you can use that. Most of those workshop posts have gotten sent to like the Dungeon Master channels. So you'll get, if you give yourself the newbie DM or experienced DM role, you'll get pings about the future workshops through that method.
Oh yeah, I have to go take care of something. So thank you everyone. If you have any questions, again, feel free to message me. See you guys around. Peace out.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Have a great night.